Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking the anatomy of a career transition, quiet thriving, and the psychology of hope. We're going to explore everything from some seriously inspiring real-life stories all the way to the cutting-edge psychology of hope, all to help you master your career flow. Let's get right into it. Okay, let's dive into this. Is 35 too late to start over? Man, it's a question that plagues so many mid-career professionals. You've invested years into a specific path, and suddenly you wake up and wonder, wait, have I lost too much time? It's a completely valid anxiety, and it actually recently sparked a massive thread on a career guidance forum where people were just begging for inspiration. And honestly, the answers were absolutely incredible. Take this raw anecdote from a user named Say. They graduated law school at 31, which we all know is a massive investment of both time and money, only to realize they absolutely hated lawyers. So after a period of intense soul-searching, they completely pivoted. They started a pet care company because, well, animals were their true passion. And now, they've never been happier, and they just hit 6 figures this year. This perfectly illustrates that a completely unrelated pivot is not only possible, but it can actually lead to immense personal and financial success. You don't have to stay stuck just because you hold a specific degree. Let's look at our next example, which highlights a completely different type of transition. This user, Jack Jackattack, was working retail for just $10 an hour in their late 20s, but they decided to really grind it out, earning an online accounting degree by age 31. Now, it wasn't instant magic. They actually had to go back to retail for a bit before landing an entry-level government clerk job. But they persisted. They strategically built their skills, eventually earning an MBA and their CPA license. Over 10 years, their salary jumped by about 250%. It just proves that strategic skill building and sheer persistence compound dramatically over time. You feel 1,000% better about life when you take that control. And look at this one. We've got a shift from a PhD biology postdoc to a data scientist at age 35. Because the future felt too uncertain, they wanted stability and a brand new challenge. The universal theme across all these stories is beautifully simple. Nothing happens if you don't actively choose to make a change. The catalyst is always a deliberate decision to just try. But making a massive leap to a whole new industry isn't the only way to transform your career. Sometimes the transformation needs to happen right where you already are. Section 1. The rise of quiet thriving. To really understand this trend, we have to zoom out from these personal stories and look at macro organizational shifts. Look at this number right here, 59%. In 2023, Gallup discovered that roughly 59% of the global workforce was quiet quitting. And, it wasn't some sudden rebellion. It was really a natural reaction to the blurring boundaries of hybrid work. People just stopped doing the extra unrewarded trudge. Now, what's really interesting about this is the contrast. Quiet quitting was essentially a passive defense mechanism, right? Disconnecting entirely and just doing the bare minimum to survive. But out of that ash, a much healthier, much more active stance has emerged, and that's quiet thriving. It's all about fiercely protecting your time and energy, but, and this is absolutely crucial, doing it without disconnecting from the actual value of your work. Let's define this firmly. Quiet thriving is a workplace approach where employees establish solid boundaries, they stop saying yes to every random request, they prioritize their own skill building, and they pay really sharp attention to where their effort goes. The vital distinction here is that quiet thrivers still care deeply about doing good work, but they actively avoid those reactive, energy-draining tasks that offer zero personal growth in return. Basically, they take control of their own engagement. Section 2. Redesigning your workday. So how do we actually move from theory to action here? First, let's look at the macro level. If you're a leader, you literally have to structuralize engagement, because burnout isn't just caused by hard work, it's mostly caused by confusion and vague expectations. Think about it. One-to-ones can't just be sterile status updates anymore. They have to be safe spaces for actual growth and discussing friction. Microlearning and mentoring, that needs to be built right into the weekly workload, not expected as some kind of weekend homework. And work design needs crystal clear expectations on response times to genuinely protect downtime. Because if everything is always urgent, nothing is sustainable. But hey, what if you aren't the boss? Well, you can still take massive action through what researchers call job crafting. Walk through these highly actionable steps with me. Step 1. Spend a week mentally tracking tasks. Figure out what gives you energy and what completely drains you. Then try to trade or batch those draining tasks. Step 2. Fiercely protect just one 60-minute block of deep, distraction-free focus every single day. Just block it out. And step 3. Establish simple vocal boundaries. Say no meetings after 4 p.m. or no checking Slack during dinner. You will be amazed at how quickly people adjust to consistent boundaries when you actually set them. Section 3, the psychology of hope. And this brilliantly illustrates our next point. All this boundary setting requires a seriously resilient mindset. To understand how individuals pull this off, we're going to anchor these tactics in robust psychology. What we're looking at here is an abstract from a peer-reviewed paper by researcher Murat Konuk exploring the role of hope in career transitions. It essentially highlights that navigating profound uncertainty requires a really deep internal resource. The foundational framework here is Snyder's hope theory. Let's break down the academic jargon into 3 accessible pillars that literally anyone can apply to their professional life. First up is goal-directed thinking. You need clearly defined, meaningful aspirations. Second is pathways thinking. This is your ability to generate alternative routes and contingency plans when a door inevitably slams in your face. And third is agency thinking. That's sustaining the internal motivation and self-belief to actually keep pushing forward and walk down those new pathways. This brings us to a really vital realization. Hope is not passive optimism. It isn't just crossing your fingers and wishing for the best. In a career context, hope is dynamic, adaptable, and fundamentally rooted in proactive problem solving. It's a robust psychological resource. Remember that retail worker who got rejected from accounting firms? Well, hope didn't mean smiling and ignoring it. Hope meant utilizing that pathways thinking to find a backdoor through a government clerk position. Hope actually equips you to handle rejections by finding totally new angles of approach. Section 4, Mastering Career Flow. So what does this all mean? How do we tie the raw anecdotes, the boundary setting, and the psychology all together? Well, researchers call this the career flow metaphor. It's the idea of viewing your career progression not as a rigid ladder, but as a dynamic, continuous river. You achieve an optimal state of engagement, or flow, by constantly balancing the challenges of your workplace with your existing skills. Because let's face it, career paths are rarely a straight line anymore. They're full of bends, rapids, and calm stretches. Navigating this river effectively requires the exact agency and boundary setting we just explored, all fueled by the psychological hope to keep paddling. So the crucial point is summarized perfectly by this quote from the research. Hope emerges as a fundamental psychological resource that enables students to approach the future more constructively, adaptively, and resolutely. And that applies to absolutely all of us, not just students. When you cultivate the specific, action-oriented hope, transitional uncertainty stops being a paralyzing fear. Instead, it transforms into a highly motivating challenge. It's a real game changer. We have covered a lot of ground in this explainer today, from starting a pet care company to the actual science of hope. But none of this matters if you don't take action. So I'm going to leave you with this question. What small boundary will you draw today to start your own career flow? Will you block off that 1 hour of focus time? Are you going to finally speak up in your one-to-one? The power to pivot is entirely in your hands. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.